So in the world of the Dervilla mythos, you don't gain power by climbing up to some heavenly throne. No, it's actually the exact opposite. You find it by going down, by descending into absolute chaos. Today, we're going to unpack the story of Wotan, the mad Rune King, and his very calculated fall from being a god into something, well, way more terrifying. I mean, wow, that pretty much says it all, doesn't it? The king who rules the end of all things. But here's the thing. His journey from being just another god in a dying pantheon to becoming this absolute ruler, well, it was anything but simple. And it definitely wasn't a glorious rise to power. Right, so his so-called ascent wasn't an ascent at all. It wasn't a climb. And to really get our heads around Wotan's whole journey, his apotheosis, we have to look at the completely broken worlds that made him. It was a calculated fall, and that's the real kicker. This wasn't an accident. So why? What in the world would drive a god to intentionally throw himself into the foundational chaos of everything? That's the big question we're digging into. All right, let's get into it. The catalyst for all this? The hero is dead. To figure out that why, we've got to go right back to the start of Wotan's transformation. And you know, it all begins with an ending. So yeah, his whole journey literally kicks off at the grave of the heroic ideal. I mean, picture this. He watches his entire pantheon just collapse. And in that moment, he has this massive realization. All those old virtues, honor, order, destiny, they're not a path to power anymore. They're just a pretty-looking prison. And these are the things we're talking about. Honor, order, destiny. These are the very ideas he realizes he has to shatter. Because after seeing that whole cosmic joke, the green-gold farce, Wotan looks at these virtues and sees them for what they are, just chains holding him back. So what's the alternative? Well, to avoid becoming what's called the last man, this comfortable, stagnant creature with zero will to power, he makes a choice, a really terrifying one. He decides he's going to embrace the unheimlich, the uncanny, the very same chaotic, unsettling forces that his ancestors were terrified of, the forces that led them to ruin. Okay, section 2, the process of deconstructing a god. So how does a god even begin to systematically take himself apart? Let's look at the tools Wotan used, not just to break himself down, but to rebuild himself in the image of pure chaos. His first tool, and this is absolutely crucial, is the discovery of the mad runes. Now, this is not just some new language. Think of it as the literal alphabet of the void, a way of communicating that doesn't just describe reality. No, it rewrites it. And this comparison just lays it all out, right? The old runes, they tried to name things, to categorize, to reflect the natural order. But the mad runes, they defy all logic. They're the language of chaos. The old way sought wisdom and reality. Wotan's new way uses this chaotic language to rewrite the soul's logic itself. It's a complete paradigm shift. And get this, he does this literally. He carves these runes into his own skin. Every single cut is a rejection of the reality we all agree on. He's bleeding out everything that makes him human, all too human, and he's replacing it with this humming, discordant energy of the absolute. So all of this self-mutilation with the runes, it's not for nothing. It unlocks something. Chaos magic. You can think of it as the raw, unrefined power of the universe, the divine lightning. And the key here is that it is totally stripped of any and all safety filters. So, what's the outcome of all this? The king is born. What happens when a god starts playing with this kind of dangerous, self-destructive power? Well, something entirely new comes into being. It starts inside him. First, his own sanity just fractures. But then the really wild part happens. The world around him, the physical reality, starts to mirror his broken mind. His internal chaos starts bleeding out into the external world. And this is what's called the villain's apotheosis. First, his environment becomes uncanny. Everything starts to vibrate with this hidden, almost malevolent purpose. And then, the line between himself and the rest of the world just evaporates. He no longer sees the world as something separate. He sees it as a projection of his own expanding, shattered will. And this quote is so important. When people look at him and call him mad, it's not because he's broken, it's because they can't process the new reality he's creating. A reality that has been completely stripped of all its moral and physical anchors. They're the ones who can't keep up. Everything we've talked about builds to this, a state called frenzy and fervor. And this is absolutely not the cold, detached power you might imagine from a god. Nope. This is a state of ecstatic high tension, a permanent storm of creation and destruction, happening all at once, all the time.
Think about this for a second. The heat of his vitality is described as burning with the power of 1,000 dying stars. This is not quiet, careful mastery. It's a violent, over-the-top, ecstatic affirmation of life, and it's fueled by the constant burning of his old self.
Okay, so this is where his relationship with the Sapphire Jester really clicks into place. The Jester, he represents the universe's irony. He mocks the whole green-gold farce and just points out that it's all a cosmic joke. But Wotan, he takes that same cosmic irony and weaponizes it. He doesn't just mock the joke. He becomes the one leading the dance. He's directing the punchline. But, of course, there's a price. Section 4, a tragic triumph. Gaining this kind of ultimate, terrifying power, it doesn't come for free. It comes at a cost that's, well, pretty much unimaginable. So, on the one hand, his success is insane. He has gained the power to literally rewrite existence. But the cost? He loses all connection to humanity. He's a god, but he's completely, utterly alone in a world that only he can understand. And yet, and this is the really twisted part, within the brutal logic of this whole mythos, that isolation is actually his greatest strength. It's the proof that he's truly overcome himself. He's thrown away the need for anyone else's approval. It's the ultimate success. So what do we make of all this? His story is both a warning and kind of an invitation. He shows us the final terrifying destination when you take self-mastery to its absolute logical extreme. It forces you to ask, what does real power actually demand of you? Wotan gave up everything, his sanity, his humanity, his connection to the entire world to become a king. So it leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. What would you be willing to sacrifice to get what you want?